Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Wrestling vs. the World podcast. If you're enjoying your day, sweet. If not, what the hell ever. And it is finally time. WWE matches that were changed due to the phrase cards subject to change taking effect. Part 4. Yeah, that's right. It's been a while since Part 3. So, the first 3 parts, I've done more than 200 listings of WWE matches that have changed between the time of when it was first announced up until the bell rang for these matches to happen on big pay-per-views and everything. Today, I have got 50 more examples. I want to re-clarify the rules first, and before I get to those 50, there are 3 matches that I have to discuss that I've mentioned in past episodes that I want to give some clarification on. So, a reminder of the rules when it comes to this list. Number 1, these must be televised matches, so no house shows. Number 2, these do not include matches that we're giving a no DQ-esque type of match stipulation later on, like no disqualification, no holds barred, street fights, stuff like that. And number 3, no Battle Royal-esque matches where somebody was just replaced in a match. Okay, plain and simple. Now, if you've listened to the past episodes, there are actually 1 match that I need to give an update on, and 2 others that have actually had graphics found. So, 1 match I need to give a quick update on. The 6-man tag match that we saw at Bad Blood in Your House. I mentioned before that it was Legion of Doom and Ken Shamrock against the Nation of Domination. And I mentioned in that episode where I was talking about this match saying that Ken Shamrock had to be taken out of the match due to injury and became a 2-on-3 handicap match of Legion of Doom versus the Nation of Domination. Well, after I uploaded the episode, I realized and kept looking back on more episodes like Superstars and everything that originally Farouk was supposed to have been in the match as part of the Nation of Domination. But then when he got into the tournament finals for the vacant Intercontinental Championship against Owen Hart, he was removed from the match. I believe he was replaced by Rocky Maivia. So I didn't realize at first that Farouk was supposed to have been part of the match in the first place. Now, 2 updates I wanted to give, because if you listen to the end of Part 3, I mentioned honorable mentions, and this won't really help for anybody who's listening to the podcast compared to who's watching on YouTube. But there were 2 matches that I mentioned in those honorable mentions that matches were announced, but no graphics were found, and yet I have found 2 graphics. So first off, the WrestleMania 24 Money in the Bank ladder match. It was mentioned that Jeff Hardy was supposed to have been in the match itself, but was removed due to his wellness policy violation, which also caused him to lose the Intercontinental Championship. Well, it turns out during the My Life, My Rules Jeff Hardy DVD, when they were talking about that time period, they did show a bit of a match graphic. Now, granted, it was in 4:3 aspect ratio on the DVD, or maybe uploaded elsewhere. I'm sure somebody could find the 16:9 version if it's out there. But the match graphic does exist courtesy of that DVD. I could not find it on episodes of Raw, SmackDown, or Heat, or anything like that, but that one's been preserved. And also, a big one. Shout out to We Are Pro Wrestling. Thank you, James, for letting me know about this. But the one for Bret Hart versus Psycho Sid from In Your House, Revenge of the Taker was found. As mentioned before, that was the original plan for In Your House, Revenge of the Taker, stemming from Bret's involvement at the WrestleMania 13 main event, where Bret cost Psycho Sid the championship against The Undertaker. So these 2 were supposed to have had a match at In Your House, Revenge of the Taker. However, Sid started missing shows, including Raws and house shows and everything. So the company took him out of the match, replaced him with Stone Cold, and they would add the #1 contendership for the WWF Championship at In Your House, A Cold Day in Hell, upon Stone Cold replacing Psycho Sid. So now we got those out of the way, it's time to get to the next 50 entries that I got on here for this list. Let's start off with some that I should have had in the 3rd part, but I kept missing out on. So, entry number 1. The Viking Raiders versus Street Profits at Backlash 2020. We were supposed to have seen the Raw Tag Team titles go on the line against these 2 tag teams. They're feuding with just these different competitions going on, who can do better at this sport and that sport. And instead of having a match at the pay-per-view, it just turned out into one of those overall brawls between both teams before the bell was supposed to ring, so match got shit-canned. It's not going to be the only time we're going to see this on the list. Entry number 2. We're supposed to see Ronda Rousey versus Rhea Ripley at Money in the Bank 2022. However, for whatever reason, Rhea Ripley was not medically cleared to wrestle on this pay-per-view, and instead, she got replaced by Carmella. Kind of a... It's almost like a cop-out type of choice to do. Somebody can't wrestle, throw in Carmella. Entry number 3. Elimination Chamber 2020-22. The Usos were supposed to go against the Viking Raiders for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, but just like we saw last time, it was supposed to have been a match, but instead it was just a brawl during the pay-per-view instead, so another match got shit-canned, and it's just, hey, we're gonna brawl instead. Yeah, we're gonna see more of that. Next up, SummerSlam 2022. We're supposed to see Matt Riddle versus Seth Rollins going one-on-one. Now, there have been conflicting reasons as to why this match did not happen. Like, they wrote Matt Riddle off saying he had a kayfabe injury. Seth Rollins says it was because they were running low on time due to time constraints and booking. I've also heard that Matt Riddle failed a drug test, but nothing's been validated for the reason. But whatever reason, we're supposed to have the match, got shake hand, it's whatever. Now, a bit of an update on one. Well, technically a new one. Ken Shamrock versus Owen Hart from Fully Loaded in 1998, aka In Your House. It was always going to be the Stu Hart Dungeon match, or whatever it was called. And originally, Dan Severn wasn't the special guest referee. Yeah, that's right, as you can probably see on the screen on YouTube. No special guest referee at first, then Dan the Beast Severn was added in as referee later on. Now, a bit of an odd one. Great American Bash 2004, The Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys, had a bit of a difference for advertising here. Before it became the Concrete Crypt match for this handicap match, it was Live Free or Die. I guess it was kind of along the same lines, but they had different wording and booking here for this overall match. Number 7, No Way Out 2004, Nydia versus Jamie Noble. This was originally a standard match, and then later on you had the blindfold match stipulation added after the whole thing of Nydia had been blinded because of Tajiri and the Black Mist, so the blindfold match wasn't the initial thing there until a little bit later on. Next up, one I didn't realize at all, Survivor Series 1990, the Hulkamaniacs versus the Natural Disasters. Rick Rude was advertised on the Natural Disasters side, however, before Survivor Series 1990, Rick Rude would leave the company overall, I believe it was due to pay disputes, and he was replaced by Haku. Good choice there. Now next up, Hell in a Cell 2013. It was originally just CM Punk versus Ryback one-on-one inside Hell in a Cell, rather than a handicap match with Paul Heyman. But Heyman would later be added because I believe CM Punk won a match to add any kind of specialty to the match overall, so Heyman wasn't originally in this match whatsoever. Now, I know some people have mentioned this, I'm going to throw this in anyway. May 16, 2022 episode of Raw, we were supposed to see a women's six-pack challenge to determine the number one contender to the Raw Women's Championship. And this match, of course, was scrapped because two of the participants, Naomi and Sasha Banks, walked out of WWE as Raw was going on throughout the show. So instead, it was Becky Lynch versus somebody else. I know they replaced with somebody else for a one-on-one match for this title match, so six-pack challenge got completely scrapped. Another bit of an oddball one, kind of fitting into the theme of what we just saw with the Great American Bash 2004 match. Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle from Judgment Day 2001 was advertised as a medals match, so I guess winner gets Kurt Angle's gold medals. Then they upgraded it to becoming essentially what was a 3 stages of hell match, like 2 to 3 falls. Each match had a stipulation, even though it wasn't like any extreme stipulations, but still something along those lines. Number 12, Stone Cold vs. Kane at King of the Ring 1998 wasn't originally a First Blood match. It was actually a standard one-on-one WWF Championship match, and then the First Blood match stipulation was added just a little later on during the build. Now, we're going to see a few more of these with these themes. Hell in a Cell 2018, Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against Braun Strowman due to the Money in the Bank cash-in. Mick Foley was later added as a special guest referee, so another instance where match is booked, but no special guest referee right away. Now this one, I had no clue this was going on. Unforgiven 2003, the original booked match was Jonathan Coachman versus Jim Ross. I'm not even kidding. Then later on, after Al Snow turned heel and joined an alliance with Jonathan Coachman, the match would later be changed to Jonathan Coachman and Al Snow versus Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, with the stipulation being that the winning team would get the Raw commentary table spot. Now this one, I don't know how I missed it. Survivor Series 2017, Team Raw for the men's side versus Team SmackDown for the men's side. Jason Jordan was a part of Team Raw, but later got booted out and replaced by Triple H. Backlash 1999. Originally, Mankind and The Big Show were scheduled to go one-on-one in a standard one-on-one match, and then later on, we got the added stipulation that it was a boiler room brawl. Good thing they did that, even though it was really bloody. WrestleMania 36. Kind of a forgotten thing was that John Cena versus The Fiend was a standard one-on-one match, and then later got added the stipulation being a Firefly Funhouse match. So, another instance of, let's book a stipulation later. Speaking of that, No Mercy 2003. Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship was a standard one-on-one match. Then after Undertaker broke out a chain on a later episode of SmackDown, it became a biker chain match, aka chain on a pole. The stipulation still being that the match has ended via pinfall or submission rather than just an item retrieval. Now this one, I've also got to thank We Are Pro Wrestling for this one. WrestleMania 10, it was supposed to have been Alundra Blaze defending the Women's Championship against Debbie Combs. The name honestly does not ring a bell for myself, but she would later be replaced by Leilani Kai for Alundra Blaze's opponent. Match number 20. Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero. We're seeing more of these. Was initially a standard one-on-one match for No Mercy 2006, but then was given an added stipulation of Falls Count Anywhere. New Year's Revolution 2007. DX vs. Rated RKO originally was just a standard tag team match, and then a little bit later on, the World Tag Team Championships, which were being held by Rated RKO, would be put on the line for this tag team bout. A bit of a one that I never knew before. WrestleMania 23, we know that the Women's Championship was put on the line between Melina and Ashley, but the Lumberjill/Lumberjack match stipulation was not originally there for the original booking of the match. Armageddon 2007, Triple H versus Jeff Hardy. There was literally nothing put on the line in the original booking, and then later on it was added that the winner would get a shot at Randy Orton's WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. Now we're going to cross into some that people never knew and I never knew until this stuff was uploaded here on YouTube, but we got some matches from Insurrection 2001. Originally, first of all, we were supposed to get Chris Jericho versus Kurt Angle in a one-on-one match in Insurrection, but that would later be changed to Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit going one-on-one against each other in a standard 2 out of 3 falls match. Next up, we were supposed to see the Dudleys, being Spike, Bubba Ray, and Devon, versus X Factor, which I believe was just Albert, X-Pac, and Just Incredible, versus Christian, Edge, and Rhino. So a 9-man triple threat tag team match in Insurrection, but then would be completely overhauled to being Edge and Christian versus the Dudley Boys, versus the Hardy Boys, versus X Factor just being X-Pac and Just Incredible. We're supposed to also at Insurrection gotten a women's battle royal for their event, but this pay-per-view, once the show happened, there would end up being no women's match whatsoever. 3 more for Insurrection. The next one, we're supposed to see Test go one-on-one against the Big Show. However, instead, Big Show will go one-on-one against Bradshaw, and Test would not have a match on the pay-per-view. Also in Insurrection 2001, we were supposed to see Chris Benoit go against William Regal for the Queen's Cup. However, instead, Chris Benoit, like I mentioned, would go against Kurt Angle, and Chris Jericho would replace Chris Benoit against Regal for still going on the line for the Queen's Cup, as mentioned earlier. And the other one for Insurrection 2001, we were supposed to see Perry Saturn versus Hardcore Holly, but then that got changed to a big 6-person tag match. The Radicals, being Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Terry Runnels, going against the Hollies, being Crash, Hardcore, and Molly Holly. Now we're going to jump back to 2007. Vengeance Night of Champions, Edge and Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. Instead of saying Last Chance match, it was, for some reason, saying Do or Die match. I guess it wasn't PG enough, so we had to change it to Last Chance afterwards. Another one that I never knew of. Bad Blood 2004. It was supposed to have been Victoria defending the Women's Championship one-on-one against Gail Kim. But then as the build continued along, it would end up becoming a fatal 4-way match for the Women's Championship when you added on Lita and Trish Stratus. Also a slightly different one. In Your House Buried Alive, we did get Psycho Sid versus Vader. However, the number 1 contendership for Shawn Michaels' WWF Championship at Survivor Series was not initially added in the match right away, so that was a later added stipulation for a title shot. Another mystery one that I did not know of due to the timing. At Breaking Point in 2009, we were supposed to see Rey Mysterio defend the Intercontinental Championship against Dolph Ziggler, continuing their feud. However, right after this match was announced, Rey Mysterio would be suspended from the WWE due to a wellness policy violation, and also had to drop the Intercontinental Championship to John Morrison, which was a great SmackDown match, by the way. So there would be no Intercontinental Championship match at Breaking Point, and instead Dolph Ziggler would embark into a on-screen segment with Pat Patterson. Fatal 4-Way. I did not know this until I finally found the overall match graphic. It was true that Big Show, CM Punk, Jack Swagger, and Undertaker were supposed to go against each other at the Fatal 4-Way pay-per-view, but the night that The Undertaker qualified for his match, he would suffer an injury due to concussion, I think a broken nose, maybe an orbital bone, but due to his injury in the match against Rey Mysterio, he had to withdraw from the pay-per-view and was replaced by Rey Mysterio himself. Money in the Bank 2012. We're getting back into the referee stuff. For CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Money in the Bank 2012, AJ Lee was not initially a special guest referee. There was no referee to start before they added the no disqualification stipulation and then AJ as well. Backlash 2002, one of the longest matches on the night, Stone Cold versus The Undertaker, did not have Ric Flair as a special guest referee when the match was officially booked. Now, Kane versus Shane McMahon, Unforgiven 2003, was a standard one-on-one match before later becoming a last man standing match for these two at the early parts of their feud. Speaking of Unforgiven 2003 as well, did not realize this until it was brought to my attention. Originally, you're supposed to have seen all three members of the Dudley Boys, Spike, Devon, and Bubba Ray, against all three members of La Resistance, being Rob Conway, Sylvain Grenier, and Rene Dupree in a 6-person tag team tables match. However, things got turned around because Spike Dudley was out due to a neck injury due to a botched, I can't remember what the name of their finisher was, but it was like an elevated double team spine buster. Did not get through the table, so instead during Sunday Night Heat, it was announced that this was being changed to a 3-on-2 handicap tables match, so Devon and Bubba Ray against all three members of La Resistance, and the World Tag Team titles would be put on the line as named by Stone Cold Steve Austin. SummerSlam 95. Undertaker Kamal Mustafa was a standard one-on-one match, and then would later be added in with a stipulation that these two would go one-on-one inside a casket match. So standard to casket. WrestleMania 12. Minor one here. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were supposed to go on one-on-one in a standard match for the WWF Championship, but then was given the Iron Man match stipulation at a later date. Now this one I never knew until I scoured across past episodes of shows in 96. At In Your House, Good Friends, Better Enemies. You're supposed to have seen Marvelous Mark Merrill versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H. But in storyline, Triple H refused to sign the contract to officially have the match, and instead they would later just delay it a little bit later on. I believe it was at Beware of Dog when they had their first one-on-one match, so they delayed it by a little bit. Undertaker versus AJ Styles, WrestleMania 36, was a standard match when it was officially booked, and then later on, AJ Styles upped the ante by actually challenging The Undertaker to upgrade this to a Boneyard match, which was just buried alive out in a off location away from the Performance Center. WrestleMania 39, a minor one. Edge versus Finn Balor in Hell in a Cell. Finn was originally advertised to be in his human form, and then they later upgraded the match graphic for him to be in his demon form. And then this also adds on to this one. Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, SummerSlam 2016, the exact same thing. Finn Balor was advertised in human form, and then they later upgraded the graphic when he got out into his demon form for the pay-per-view match. This one was a new one. Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, SummerSlam 2005, was originally just a standard one-on-one match for the custody of Dominic. But then they were adding the stipulation that this would be a ladder match with a briefcase and custody papers inside of it above the ring, so ladder match stipulation would be added later on. This one I thought I covered, but I didn't. But I finally found the graphic after so much looking. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Jonathan Coachman, Taboo Tuesday 2005. As we remember at Raw Homecoming, Stone Cold stunned the entire McMahon family, and the week after, they fired Jim Ross because they didn't feel his was apologizing well enough compared to Jerry Lawler and Jonathan Coachman. And in real life, JR had to get time away due to colon surgery. So Stone Cold instead had to take on Jonathan Coachman in a one-on-one match at Taboo Tuesday, with the stipulation being that if Stone Cold wins, JR is retired. But if Stone Cold loses, he's fired. But I've heard two different reasons as to why this match didn't happen. One saying Stone Cold got injured during training, and the other one saying he flat out refused to do the match because he didn't want to lose to Coachman. So instead, Stone Cold would be replaced by Batista. Coachman would also get Vader and Goldust in his corner, and they would have a voted stipulation for the match later on for the fans. This one I was glad to finally get the graphic for. Paul London and Brian Kendrick versus Dave Taylor and William Regal at Armageddon 2006 was the originally booked tag team championship match. But then as the match was about to begin, Teddy Long came out and decided to up the match, adding Eminem and the Hardy Boys, and we would get the ladder match stipulation. And we all know what would happen with Joey Mercury during this match, but yeah, we went from standard tag team title match to fatal four-way tag team ladder match for the tag team championships. Two more for referees, and then one final one to close things out. John Cena versus CM Punk SummerSlam 2011 did not have a special guest referee at first. Just going to be one-on-one for both WWE championships to make an undisputed champion, and then later on Triple H announced himself as a special guest referee to officiate the bout. That also ties into the next one. John Cena versus Daniel Bryan SummerSlam 2013 also did not have a special guest referee upon the match's initial announcement. Later on, Brad Maddox tried to claim that he would be the right man to become special guest referee, would not be biased, but then Triple H interjected saying, "No, I'm going to be the referee." So, went from no referee to Brad Maddox trying to be referee, and then Triple H officiating for good. And then the last one. I finally found this one because there are two versions of this graphic. We were supposed to see in WrestleMania 13 a one-on-one Chicago street fight between Ahmed Johnson and Farouk for the whole Nation of Domination versus Ahmed Johnson feud. But then as time went along, it became a six-man tag team Chicago street fight because LOD, who had returned to the company not too long beforehand, would join Ahmed Johnson. Because, of course, they were in Rosemont, Illinois, which is kind of like the backyard to Chicago, which is where the Road Warriors are built from. And then Farouk would team up with Crush and Savio Vega to form this six-man tag team Chicago street fight. So there you have it, folks. One match that had to get updated, 2 graphics were found, and 50 other matches were added to this list. Overall, excluding the matches that were... Well, if you include the match graphics now for the 2 matches that were finally found, it equates to 294 matches that have been changed since initially advertised. So 2 matches that finally found the graphics for, 100 for episode 1 and 2 each, so 200 there, 42 for episode 3, and now 50 for this one. It is absolutely insane. And I know it's not going to be the last of it, but glad to finally find enough to give us a part 4. So let me know in the comment section below how many of these were a complete mystery to you in terms of matches that were changed since initially advertised. If you enjoyed today's episode, folks, leave a like, subscribe with the bell turn on if you're listening to this on YouTube, or follow if you're listening to this podcast on any other service that this podcast is available on, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.